The ultimate revenge, when family favoritism backfires. Hey, I wasn't even planning to write this, but after everything that happened, I need to get it off my chest. Maybe some of you have been in a similar situation, maybe not. But I just need to tell my story. So, let's start with the basics. I'm a 24-year-old guy, and I come from what you might call a functional, but deeply unfair family. We weren't the kind of family that screamed at each other every night or threw dishes across the room. No, it was more subtle than that. A kind of quiet favoritism that made it clear where I stood in the pecking order. I have one older brother, Ethan, 27, and if you ask my parents, he's basically the second coming of Christ. He could get away with anything growing up. He slacked off in school. Oh, he's just a free spirit. He broke something expensive. It was an accident. He failed to get a job after college and mooched off my parents for years. He's just taking time to find himself. Meanwhile, I was expected to be the responsible one. Good grades were just expected, not celebrated. When I got my first job at 16, my parents encouraged me to help out the family by giving Ethan money whenever he needed it. When I got into a good college, they barely acknowledged it. But when Ethan took a single online course and dropped out halfway through, they threw him a whole congratulatory dinner. I used to think maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I was just bitter. But the older I got, the clearer it became. The golden child treatment was real, and I wasn't the one benefiting from it. Still, I tried to be a good son. I didn't cause trouble. I didn't fight back much. I just focused on getting my degree, working hard, and eventually moving out. I saved up, got a decent apartment, and finally had some space away from all of it. But even after moving out, the favoritism didn't stop. Every time I visited, my mom would guilt-trip me. Why don't you call more? Why don't you spend more time with your family? But the truth was, every time I went over, it just ended up playing the role of the unwanted extra. Ethan always took the spotlight, and I was just there on the sidelines like a guest in my own family. So why did I even bother taking them on a vacation? Well, that's a good question. I guess a part of me still hoped things could be different. That maybe if I did something nice for them, they'd finally see me as more than just that other son. I had been working a good job for a while, saving up some money, and I figured why not? A family trip could be a way to reconnect. I found a nice resort. Nothing over-the-top luxurious, but definitely a step up from the kind of places we usually stayed. Beachfront, all-inclusive, beautiful rooms. I paid for everything. Flights, hotel, meals, activities. I didn't even ask them to chip in. It was my treat. And you know what my parents said when I told them? Wow, that's so nice of you, honey. Ethan really deserves a break. Not we deserve a break. No, Ethan. I should have seen the warning signs right there, but I swallowed my frustration and told myself to let it go. It was just a slip of the tongue. Maybe they didn't mean it that way. Maybe this trip will be different. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. The moment we arrived, things started sliding downhill. We checked into the hotel, and my parents immediately started fussing over Ethan. Oh, let's make sure Ethan gets a nice room. Ethan, do you like this one? We can ask if they have something better. At this point, I was already getting a bad feeling, but I kept my mouth shut. I figured, fine, let him pick first. I didn't really care that much about the room. Ethan, of course, picked the biggest suite available, the one with the best view and the most space. Again, I'll let it slide. I mean, whatever. I could take a smaller room. As long as I had a bed, it didn't matter. Then, my mom turned to me with that overly sweet voice she used when she was about to ask for something unreasonable. So, honey, we were thinking, since Ethan needs more space to relax, maybe you could take the couch in the living area, just for a few nights? I blinked. What? Well, Ethan's room is connected to ours, and we don't want to bother him too much. And you know he's been so stressed lately. It'd be nice for him to have a proper bed. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, but she was dead serious. No, I said flatly. I'm not sleeping on the couch. My dad sighed, already acting like I was the difficult one. Come on, don't be selfish. It's just a couch. You know there are extra rooms available, right? I pointed out. Why can't we just get another room? Oh, don't be ridiculous, my mom said. There's no need to waste money like that. Waste money? I paid for this whole trip. That was when Ethan finally spoke up, lounging back like he didn't have a care in the world. Dude, stop making a big deal out of it. It's just a couple of nights. I took a deep breath. trying to stay calm. I paid for a room. I'm not sleeping on a couch. That's when my mom dropped the real bombshell. Well, there's always the car. I laughed. I actually laughed because I thought she was joking, but she just looked at me expectantly, like it was a totally reasonable suggestion. The car. I repeated, "You want me to sleep in the car?" "Well, it's a rental. It's comfortable, and it's not like it'll be that bad," she said, like I was being unreasonable. "We don't want to make Ethan uncomfortable." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I paid for this whole trip, and now they wanted me to sleep in a damn rental car, so Ethan could have even more space? I looked at my dad, expecting him to step in and say something, but he just nodded. "It's not the end of the world, son." Ethan just smirked. "Yeah, bro, don't be so dramatic." And that's when something inside me snapped. I stood there, staring at them, trying to process what had just come out of their mouths. Sleep in the car? After I paid for this whole trip? I could feel my hands clenching into fists, my nails digging into my palms. I had spent thousands to give my so-called family a nice vacation, and their idea of gratitude was kicking me out of my own hotel room so Ethan, the grown man who still lived off my parents, could have more space? Something inside me just clicked. It wasn't rage. Exactly. It was colder than that, more like clarity, a sudden, overwhelming realization that this was never going to change. No matter what I did, no matter how much I tried, I would always be second class in my own family. And I was done. I took a slow breath, forcing my face into a neutral expression. "All right," I said quietly. "You want me to sleep in the car?" My mom gave me that sickly sweet smile, the one she always used when she thought she'd won. "Oh, honey, it's just for a few nights." No, I get it. I cut her off. "Ethan needs his space. You don't want to waste money." Makes total sense. Ethan smirked, like this was all a joke to him. "Glad you see our way, bro." I smiled back at him, a real smile, the kind that probably should have set off alarm bells. But of course, Ethan wasn't paying enough attention. He never did. "Yeah," I said, "I'll handle it." Then I grabbed my bag and walked out. But I didn't go to the car. I went straight to the front desk. The lobby was quiet this late at night, just the low hum of music playing over the speakers and the soft tapping of a receptionist typing on a keyboard. She looked up as I approached, giving me a polite smile. "Good evening, sir. How can I help you?" I leaned on the counter, still smiling. "I'd like to make a reservation." She blinked. "For another room?" "No," I said. "For the entire floor." Her eyes widened slightly. "The entire, all of it?" I confirmed. "I'll pay whatever it costs." She hesitated. "Sir, that's quite expensive." I pulled out my credit card and set it on the counter. "That won't be a problem." I could see the moment she decided that, hey, if some guy wanted to drop an insane amount of money on hotel rooms, who was she to argue? She typed a few things into the computer, glanced at the screen, and nodded. "We do have availability for that. Are you sure you want to book all the rooms?" "Every last one," I said, and just like that, the floor was mine. I thanked her, took my new key cards, and made my way back to the suite, the one I had paid for. When I walked in, my parents are already getting comfortable. Ethan sprawled out on the couch watching TV, looking very pleased with himself. My mom glanced up, a little confused. "Did you get settled in the car?" "Honey," I smiled. "Oh, actually," I pulled out one of the key cards and twirled it between my fingers. "Turns out I won't have to." Ethan frowned. "What?" I tossed the key card onto the table. "Because I just booked the entire floor." There was a moment of silence. Then, my mom let out a nervous little laugh. "Oh, sweetie, don't be silly." I pulled out the receipt from the front desk and placed it in front of them. They stared at it. My dad's mouth actually dropped open a little. Ethan snatched it up, scanning the numbers, his face going pale. My mom finally managed to find her voice. But why would you?" "Well," I said, "since you guys wanted me to sleep somewhere else, I figured, hey, why not?" I gestured vaguely. "I've got plenty of rooms now." Ethan shot up from the couch. "Dude, what? You wasted all that money just to prove a point." I tilted my head. "Wasted?" I echoed. "That's funny. I thought you didn't want to waste money on extra rooms. But don't worry, this isn't a waste at all." I grinned. "Because now you don't have a room." Ethan's face contorted in confusion. "What are you talking about?" I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "See, I booked all the rooms." Ethan blinked, then his eyes widened. My dad's head snapped up. My mom let out a nervous little laugh. But we already have a room, dear. We're in it. Yeah, I said. And I paid for it, meaning it's mine. Ethan was the first to get it. No way. He looked at my mom. Tell him he can't do that. My mom turned to me, her voice sharp now. This isn't funny. Stop playing games. Oh, I'm not playing games, I said, still smiling. I'm just following your logic. You told me I needed to give up my space, remember? So I did. Now it's your turn. Ethan clenched his fists. This is bull. But before he could finish, there was a knock at the door. The hotel manager stepped inside, looking between all of us with a polite but firm expression. Is there a problem here? He asked. I turned to him, still grinning. Not at all. I was just about to let my guests know that their stay is over. My mom gasped. Ethan looked like he was about to explode. My dad just sat there stunned. And I was enjoying every second of it. The room was dead silent. My parents and Ethan just stared at me, their faces frozen in shock. The hotel manager cleared his throat, glancing at me for confirmation. I nodded. Yes, there's been a mix-up, I said smoothly. You see, I originally booked this suite for all of us, but my family decided they didn't want me here. So I figured, why not make things easier? I went ahead and booked the entire floor. I turned to my parents, watching as the weight of my words sank in. That means every room, including this one, is now under my name. Ethan's face turned red. This is stupid, he spat. You can't just kick us out. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, but I can. I gestured to the manager. I believe hotel policy states that only the person who booked the room has the right to decide who stays in it. Is that correct? The manager, who clearly wanted no part in this family drama, gave a curt nod. That's correct, sir. My mom's fake pleasantness cracked, and she let out a sharp laugh. Oh, come on, sweetheart. You're not actually going to do this. We're family. I tilted my head. Funny. That's exactly what I was thinking when you told me to go sleep in the car. Her face stiffened. That was different. Really? I asked. How? She opened her mouth, then closed it. No answer. Ethan, on the other hand, was fuming. He turned to my dad as last hope. Dad, say something. My father, who had been eerily quiet this whole time, finally stood up. He looked at me, then at my mom, then at Ethan. For a moment, I almost thought he was going to take my side. That maybe, just maybe, he'd finally stand up to them. Then he sighed, rubbing his temples. This is ridiculous, he muttered. Fine, you made your point. You want to be petty, go ahead. But we're still your family. And you're not going to just leave us without a room. I stared at him. It was amazing how he could twist this situation. How he could make me the unreasonable one, even after everything. My mom immediately jumped on his words. Yes, exactly. Look, honey, we can forget all of this. Just give us the room back, and we'll pretend this never happened. Ethan folded his arms, smirking like he'd already won. Yeah, man, don't be a baby. You got your little revenge moment. Now, just let us stay. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. You guys really don't get it, do you? I turned to the manager. Go ahead. The manager, looking almost relieved to get this over with, straightened up. Sir, ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to vacate the suite. Since the reservation is no longer under your name, you'll need to find alternative accommodations. Ethan exploded. This is insane. Where are we supposed to go? I shrugged. I hear the car is available. My mom let out a dramatic gasp, clutching her chest like I had just physically struck her. You can't do this to us. We don't have anywhere else to stay. Not my problem, I said flatly. You had plenty of space, but you wanted more. So I took it. If you're really desperate, you can always book another room. My dad, face tight with controlled anger, pulled out his phone. Fine, he snapped. We'll just get another room. He scrolled for a moment, then his face paled. He tapped the screen a few more times. His hand tightened around the phone. I smirked. Something wrong? He didn't answer. Ethan yanked the phone out of his hands and looked at it himself. His face twisted with rage. There's nothing left, he hissed. I feigned surprise. Oh, is the hotel fully booked? Ethan whipped his head toward me, eyes blazing. You booked every room on this floor. I gave him a slow nod. Correct. Ethan's jaw clenched so tight, I thought his teeth might shatter. My mom's breathing had turned shallow, her face a mixture of anger and horror. My dad looked at me like I was some kind of stranger. I leaned back, stretching my arms. So let's recap. You tried to throw me out of my own room. I, being the reasonable person I am, decided to accommodate your wishes and found my own space. You, however, refused to do the same. So now you're left with nothing. Silence. Thick, heavy silence. Then Ethan lost it. You're a selfish, petty little. I cut him off with a grin. You're homeless. My mom shrieked in frustration. Ethan stormed toward me like he was actually going to take a swing, but the manager smoothly stepped between us, raising a hand. Sir, I'll have to ask you to leave immediately. Ethan's fist trembled at his sides. My dad, still gripping his phone, let out a sharp exhale and grabbed my mom's arm. Come on, he said through gritted teeth. My mom turned to him. But we don't have anywhere. We'll figure it out, he snapped, dragging her toward the door. Ethan shot me one last look full of venom before following them. And just like that, they were gone. I turned to the manager, who gave me a slow nod of approval. That, he said, was impressive. I grinned. Thank you. He handed me the key card to the master suite. Enjoy your stay. Oh, I plan to. And as I stepped into my penthouse, shutting the door behind me, I let out a breath and smiled. For the first time in my life, I felt finally at peace. I sat down on the plush sofa, sinking into its softness, letting the silence settle around me. No nagging, no backhanded comments, no entitled demands, just peace. The massive floor-to-ceiling windows showcased a breathtaking view of the city. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was actually in control of my own life. But I wasn't naive. I knew my family wouldn't just accept this. They weren't the type to take a loss gracefully. Sure enough, my phone started buzzing. Mom texted, "You've made your point. Now stop being childish and let us back in." Dad texted, "This is ridiculous. You're going to regret this when you calm down." Ethan texted, "You're selfish." I let out a short laugh and tossed my phone onto the coffee table. They could scream into the void all they wanted. I wasn't playing their game anymore. I ordered room service, the kind of extravagant meal my parents would have never let me get growing up. Lobster steak, a dessert platter that looked like something out of a five-star restaurant. I took my time eating, scrolling through my phone, feeling more relaxed than I had in years. But then about an hour later, a knock came at my door. I sighed, already knowing exactly who it was. I stood up, stretched, and strolled over to the door, taking my time. When I opened it, I was met with three familiar, furious faces. My mom was furious. "This has gone on long enough," she hissed. "Listen." Ethan, arms crossed, sneered at me. "Hope you had your fun. Now be a good little brother and fix this." My dad's expression was cold, controlled. "Son," he said in that voice he always used when he wanted me to shut up and obey, "this isn't funny anymore. You've had your little tantrum. Now, let's be reasonable." I leaned against the doorframe, giving him a lazy smile. "Oh, I'm being reasonable. I have a place to sleep. You don't." My mom's face twitched. "We'll call the police." I actually laughed. "On what grounds? That your adult son booked a hotel room and doesn't want to share it with the people who kicked him out?" I shook my head. "Good luck with that." My dad took a deep breath, like he was trying to rein in his temper. "All right, enough of this nonsense. I'll book a new room." I grinned. "Oh, did you finally find one available?" Silence. Ethan clenched his jaw. My mom's fingers twitched at her sides. My dad's lips pressed into a thin line. I tilted my head. "What's wrong? Is the hotel completely booked?" My mom snapped. "You think this is funny? We have nowhere to go. You are ruining this trip." I shrugged. "I didn't ruin anything. I booked us a nice room for a family, and you decided you wanted me gone. I just accommodated your wishes." My dad's jaw tightened. "We'll sleep in the lobby then. You can't stop us." I smirked. "You could, sure, but this is a high-end hotel. They don't take kindly to guests loitering overnight in the lobby." Ethan scoffed. "They wouldn't dare kick us out." I pulled out my phone and tapped on the hotel's contact info. "Let's find out." Ethan lunged for my phone, but I pulled it back with ease. He seethed, looking like he was about to explode. "This isn't over," my dad said, voice low. I met his gaze, my smirk fading. "Oh, it is. You just don't like losing." My mom let out a shaky breath, and for the first time that night, she actually looked worried. "We're your family." She tried one last time. "You can't just throw us away like this." I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who had dismissed me my whole life. The father who had never backed me up. The brother who had taken everything from me without a second thought. I gave him a small smile. That's the funny thing about family. When you treat someone like they don't matter for long enough, eventually they start to believe you. I stepped back and shut the door in their faces. For the first time in my life, I chose myself and it felt good. I stood there for a moment, staring at the closed door, listening to the muffled sounds of my family standing outside. Maybe they were still fuming. Maybe they were finally realizing that I wasn't the pushover they'd always assumed I was. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. I turned back toward the massive suite, stretching my arms as I walked over to the window. The city lights stretched out in every direction, glittering and endless. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just an afterthought. I wasn't the one making sacrifices while everyone else took what they wanted. I grabbed a glass from the room service cart, took a slow sip, and let out a satisfied sigh. Best vacation ever. So, what do you think? Let me know in the comments.